you like Granada for the Sega Genesis? If so, it's time to get stoked. Metal Stoker is a 1991 PC Engine top-down shooter developed and published by Face. Yes, you heard me correctly, F-A-C-E, Face. In this game, the player takes control of a variety of different vehicles to destroy a number of objectives in a fairly free-roaming style in order to reach and eliminate a boss to progress. Sound familiar? Beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 beep. Metal Stoker is Granada with some tweaks. Shameless self-promotion. This is some shameless self-promotion. For those who haven't seen it, check out our last review where we took a look at Wolf Team and Renovation's Genesis port of the aforementioned Granada. In short, it's one of my favorite titles on the 16-bit Sega console, and, well, Metal Stoker is kinda better in a few different ways. Face was a fairly unknown publisher. As a matter of fact, I had little to no luck finding any information about them by this or their other name, Senkido, anywhere. The latter being the moniker they would use for the majority of their output. Why they released Metal Stoker under the former title rather than the latter is a mystery to me, since, from what I can tell, a lot of the Senkido crew worked on this game. But enough about that, let's dig into why I dig this thing so much. Fans of Granada will know how clumsy and time-consuming its controls could be to master at first. It utilized all three buttons on the original Sega Genesis controller to fire, lock, and use heavy weapons, and took the fingers of a contortionist to play effectively. Metal Stoker is more streamlined, as it uses the much simpler two-button turbo pad. One button fires, the other locks, making it a more comfortable game to play, as the player only needs to manage their weapons in between bouts of strafing. It still takes a few minutes to get used to, but feels better overall. That's not to suggest that this game is any easier as a result. The PC Engine is known for its speedy shooters, and Metal Stoker does not disappoint in this department. Waves of enemies will be a constant threat, and the pace overall is frantic. Metal Stoker doesn't screw around. From the get-go, this game is camping. It's intense. To combat the many obstacles tossed your way, the player can choose from a variety of different ships from the pause menu, provided by power-ups throughout the missions. A quick but relatively weak machine gun, a double-barreled laser rifle, homing missiles, landmines, and a sort of shield barrier that inflicts massive damage to anything that comes close enough to your ship to be hit by it. These different ships keep things interesting and welcome repeat playthroughs. To be honest, I personally have a hard time making significant use of any of them outside of the stock standard machine gun and homing missile variations. That isn't to say that the rest are bad, but for my playstyle I had a tougher time hitting targets with the others. Specifically the laser, which inflicts a ton of damage, but somehow I nearly always manage to miss everything with it. The mines are great as well, but I found them very situational, best used against larger, slower bosses that trailed in my wake. I can think of a few great uses for each weapon, but I'm generally most comfortable with the regular gun. Enemies and bosses both range in size and speed. They are well detailed, colorful, and interesting to look at, despite having little to no animation to speak of. This isn't inherently a bad thing, as everything, including your own ship, kinda just rotates and moves around the relatively open environments. The pace is quick with no slowdown to speak of. It's all incredibly fun. Hiroto Saitao and Nozomu Takahashi did the soundtrack here, and it's pretty good. I would say half of this game's 20 or so tracks are excellent, while the others are mediocre. They use some very odd structures throughout with a well-balanced use of samples to make this hue card shooter sing. I particularly like the crystal clear bass sounds and thundering percussion. Those who listen to our VGM 101 podcast know how big a fan I am of the pcengine sound, so it should be no surprise to anyone that I enjoy Metal Stoker's unique high-tempo score. It isn't necessarily something I'd listen to on its own due to its nearly unrelenting speed, but it serves the game well while playing. The backgrounds are lush, lively, and varied, with tons of tiny details throughout. The action takes place over the course of 7 stages with subsections and interesting new challenges constantly popping up to keep the player on their toes. The challenge is in mastering the game's simple controls and getting to the end as quickly as possible. Several levels might not sound like a lot, but in practice, the length feels just right for this high-octane, skill-based adventure shooter. So, as a massive fan of Granada, I can't recommend this game enough. Metal Stoker may look like a typical overhead shooter, but it keeps things interesting with its good music, ever-changing level variety, and non-stop action. There are over a dozen challenging, well-designed bosses to master, some of the best I've come up against in any game from this era. They are creative, fair, and truly a highlight. This is a bit of a rare find out in the wild, so I'd suggest finding a way to play it by any means necessary. Metal Stoker is a masterpiece.